Have you ever, found yourself wondering why certain everyday costs just seem to creep up year after year? Things like your insurance premiums, maybe? Or even the price you pay for a ride share. Well, today we're kind of pulling back the curtain on a pretty explosive legal document. It claims to expose a scheme, an alleged scheme, impacting those very things. We're diving deep into a legal complaint filed by Uber Technologies, Inc. This is in the United States District Court, Central District of California, and the title is Uber Technologies, Inc. v. Downtown LA Law Group, Igor Fradkin, the law offices of Jacob Emrani, GSK Spine, Greg Conganian, and Radiant Surgery Center. Quite a mouthful. So our mission today is to really unpack this complaint. We want to understand the alleged scheme it describes, figure out who the key players are supposed to be, and maybe most importantly, see how these kinds of activities could ripple out, right? Creating a widespread impact far beyond just the parties named in the lawsuit. It's a really fascinating and honestly sometimes startling look at this intersection of law, medicine, and rideshare services. Okay, so let's kick things off with the core problem Uber is alleging here. What's the big picture?
Well, what's really fascinating here is how the complaint zeroes in on this specific and apparently growing issue in California. We're talking about alleged fraudulent personal injury claims, and they stem from often incredibly minor car collisions. The complaint argues this fraud directly harms, well, everyone, the public, by inflating insurance rates and transportation costs.
Okay, so it's not just Uber feeling this.
No, but Uber feels it acutely.
Yeah.
If you connect this to their situation, the complaint actually states that roughly 45%, think about that, almost half of the fare for every single Uber ride in LA County goes straight to mandated insurance costs.
Wow, 45%.
Yeah, it dramatically pushes up prices for you, the rider, and it really squeezes the earnings for drivers too.
So why rideshare companies then, and Uber in particular, why are they such a tempting target for these alleged schemes? Is there something unique going on?
The complaint is pretty direct about that. It basically says rideshare companies like Uber are, well, prime targets. And the reason, it's those $1 million government-mandated insurance policy limits.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, those limits are way higher than for almost every other car on the road in California. So that makes them incredibly attractive to people running these schemes who, according to the complaint, make no secret about targeting Uber specifically for this reason.
So the deep pockets are basically painting a target on their back.
In a way, yeah. It shows how regulations, even well-intentioned ones, can sometimes create these unintended vulnerabilities, right? It turns companies with mandated high insurance into prime targets. But, the complaint does clarify, while Uber is a prime target, they are definitely not the only victims here.
Okay, so we understand why Uber might be a target. Let's peel back the layers now. How is this alleged fraud actually supposed to work? What are the mechanics?
So at its core, the complaint alleges this coordinated network. You've got certain personal injury attorneys and specific medical providers in the LA area working together. Allegedly, the scheme works like this. Attorneys direct claimants people involved in accidents to these pre-selected medical providers. And often it's for procedures related to really minor injuries or maybe even non-existent ones.
Okay.
Then after these treatments, or sometimes just after visits, these providers allegedly generate and submit these artificially inflated bills. And crucially, the bills are issued on what's called a lien basis.
A lien basis. What does that mean exactly?
It basically means the claimant agrees to pay the medical providers out of whatever money they get from their lawsuit settlement down the line. So they're not using their own health insurance up front. It's like a deferred payment plan tied directly to winning the lawsuit.
Huh. Hold on, though. If these claimants have their own health insurance, why wouldn't they just use that? Why go for these lien arrangements? Is there some advantage for the lawyers or the doctors?
That's a really good question, and it's actually key to the whole alleged scheme. The complaint calls these lien arrangements shams.
Shams.
Yeah. It claims the lawyers and the medical providers secretly make these side agreements. These agreements basically say they'll heavily discount those inflated bills if the lawsuit recovery isn't big enough to cover the full fake amount.
Okay. So there's a hidden deal.
Exactly. And these side deals are allegedly concealed. That makes the initial big medical bills look real to the insurance companies or to Uber, but they're described as false and misleading.
So the hiding of the side deals is what makes the inflated bills seem legitimate, at least on paper.
Precisely.
And Okay, how do the lawyers and medical providers actually profit from this kind of kickback setup then?
Right, so the complaint lays it out pretty clearly. In exchange for this steady stream of patients, claimants, from the lawyers, the medical providers allegedly agreed to basically give up their full lent rights if needed, discounting their bills through these secret deals. The lawyers then allegedly profit because they get paid first. Their fees and costs come off the top of any settlement. And when a claim is successful, the providers often end up recovering most or even all of their huge artificially inflated bills anyway. The complaint even alleges that in many cases, the lawyers and the medical providers walk away with more money than their own clients, the actual injured person.
Wow. And what about those clients, the claimants themselves? Are they genuinely hurt? Are they aware of what's allegedly going on?
Well, the complaint paints a picture where claimants are often just sort of shuffled directly to these pre-selected providers without regard to their need for actual medical treatment.
So maybe they don't even need the treatment they get.
That's the allegation. Lawyers allegedly send people with no or negligible injuries to these providers, who then supposedly recommend and deliver all sorts of unnecessary treatments, including expensive surgeries, and then submit those crazy inflated bills. It's described as like routine for providers to create fraudulent documents, diagnosing injuries that aren't there or exaggerating minor ones, falsely linking them to the minor accidents, and then proposing these costly, sometimes invasive, unnecessary surgeries.
And the result for the claimant.
Because of all the alleged overtreatment and these huge inflated liens hanging over the settlement, the claimants themselves often walk away with relatively minimal recovery.
Okay, we've got the alleged how. Now, who are the main players? Who does the complaint name as the central figures running this from both the medical and legal sides?
Right, the complaint names several defendants. On the medical side, there's Dr. Greg Congonian. He's a spinal surgeon, and his practice, GSK Spine, and also Radiant Surgery Center. The complaint really paints them as key partners in, generating those inflated bills and doing unnecessary procedures.
Congonian specifically.
Yeah, Congonian and GSK Spine are alleged to be these key repeat players. The complaint says he accepts referrals from lawyers who have cases against Uber, with the understanding that he'll, quote, perform specific acts to increase the value of their lawsuits.
Like what?
Like producing fraudulent documents, diagnosing specific injuries, falsely linking them to minor accidents, and recommending surgeries that aren't needed. He works on that lien basis we talked about, and allegedly, along with Radiant Surgery Center, hides those secret side agreements for discounting the liens.
Okay, and the law firms.
Yeah.
What's their alleged role in this whole machine?
The law firms of Emrani and Fradkin are described as absolutely crucial to making the scheme work. They supposedly identify people with injury claims against rideshare companies, especially Uber, and they see them as, quote, highly profitable cases regardless of the severity of the actual injuries. Why? Because of those high insurance limits we mentioned.
Right, the $1 million.
Exactly. So the complaint alleges they aggressively go after these clients, sometimes maybe taking advantage of vulnerable people, luring them with promises of big settlement payouts while charging really high contingency fees, like 45% or even more.
And then they send them where?
Then they steer these clients directly to those specific lien-based medical providers, like Kunganian, as part of the alleged kickback scheme.
Got it. And Radiant Surgery Center. Where do they fit into this loop?
Radiant Surgery Center, which also does business as Sherman Oaks Surgery Center, is described as basically specializing in treating patients who have personal injury lawsuits pending. The complaint alleges they work directly with Congonian, they participate in hiding those secret site agreements, and they also generate the inflated bills for the facility fees. Apparently, the law firms and Radiant staff coordinate the treatments, and the law firms even authorize specific tests and treatments. It completes the circle.
So stepping back, how does Uber actually label this whole alleged network in the lawsuit? What's the legal term they're using?
Yeah, that's important. The complaint is very clear. It states that Congonian, Emrani, Fradkin, and their practices are engaged in a racketeering scheme.
Racketeering. Like RICO.
Exactly. It alleges a wide-ranging pattern of corrupt activity, including violations of federal mail fraud and wire fraud laws. And those are what are called predicate acts under the federal ICO statute, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act.
Okay, so RICO is usually associated with organized crime, right?
It is, but it's a powerful federal law designed to combat patterns of criminal activity conducted through an enterprise. It allows the government, or like here, a private party like Uber that's been harmed, to go after groups engaged in repeated illegal acts like mail or wire fraud, which are alleged here.
Okay, this is where it gets really concrete, I think, because the complaint doesn't just talk in generalities. It gives specific, real-world examples of how this alleged scheme supposedly played out with actual claimants. Let's maybe walk through a couple of those, starting with personal injury claimant A.
Right. So claimant A, involved in a minor accident December 2019, the complaint says negligible vehicle damage, no injuries reported to the police at the scene. A week later, claimant A gets treatment for some muscle pain, uses their own health insurance. Okay.
Seems normal.
But then, after hiring the Imrani law firm, they were allegedly directed away from their own insurance and towards these specific lean-in medical providers.
There's the switch.
Exactly. The Imrani firm specifically approved a referral to Dr. Kunganian. And get this, an email from the firm authorizing a specific injection treatment for claimant A explicitly stated, quote, the claim involved Uber and a $1 million bodily injury policy.
Wow, they put it in writing.
Apparently so, according to the complaint. Kunganian then allegedly falsely stated that the claimant's injuries were caused by that minor accident and performed not one, but two spinal surgeries, a cervical fusion, and a second back surgery.
2 surgeries from a minor accident with initially no reported injuries.
That's the claim. The complaint even notes claimant A seemed confused by all the appointments. Ultimately, the bills from just Kunganian and Radiant Surgery Center for claimant A totaled over $556,000.
$500,000.
Yeah. And for context, an independent medical evaluation cited in the complaint concluded the surgery was medically unnecessary, below the accepted standard of care, and the charges were 10 times the accepted norms and value.
Incredible. What about claimant B? Another
Yeah.
example.
Claimant B, similar story, different details. Low-speed accident, March 2019. Again, no injuries reported to police. The Imrani firm allegedly referred claimant B to lien providers, opting out of their available medical insurance. Now, more than 18 months later, the Imrani firm sends a demand letter to Uber's insurance provider, falsely claiming spinal injuries and saying claimant B needed future cervical fusion surgery.
18 months later.
Yeah, and here's maybe the most striking part. Kunganian allegedly recommended lumbar surgery for claimant B via telehealth,
Telehealth for surgery recommendation.
without even doing a physical exam, according to the complaint. His first physical exam was reportedly done just hours before the actual surgery,
That seems unusual.
to say the least. And even though claimant B later reported, quote, 0 out of 10 pain to a chiropractor after some treatment, Kunganian later opined that claimant B would likely need future surgeries, a lumbar fusion and an anterior cervical displacement, each estimated at around $265,000.
Wow. So more potential surgeries recommended even after reporting no pain.
Right. And Kunganian's quoted price for the surgery claimant B did have was apparently almost 4 times more than what another spine surgeon charged for a similar procedure. The total medical lien billing for claimant B hit at least $330,308.42.
Okay, this next one you mentioned, claimant C, really seems to highlight the lengths this alleged scheme would go to, even geographically.
Absolutely. Claimant C's story is quite something. Minor Uber collision in Los Angeles, en route to LAX, sitting on the opposite side of where the car was hit. He flies home to St. Louis, Missouri that same day.
Okay.
8 days later, he gets some chiropractic treatment back in St. Louis. After about a month and a half, he reports nearly non-existent pain. Then he has a 4-month gap where he gets no treatment at all.
So, seems like he recovered.
You'd think. And despite this, the complaint says he was posting video clips online of himself dancing and singing, not exactly showing debilitating back pain, but he retains the downtown LA law group. And they allegedly direct him to Kunganian, back in California, over 1,800 miles away.
They flew him back from St. Louis for treatment in L.A.
That's what's alleged. Kunganian then supposedly falsely stated claimant C had severe and worsening symptoms. He performed a microdiscectomy surgery in Los Angeles, and claimant C actually testified under oath that, incredibly, Kunganian, his doctor, paid for his and his mother's round-trip airfare and hotel accommodations for the surgery.
The doctor paid for the travel.
That's the testimony cited in the complaint. Claimant C's total medical bills hit $246,000 for this. But an independent expert looked at it and determined the reasonable value of Kunganian's services was less than a tenth of that, around $10,374.98.
Wow.
Claimant C also testified he never paid Kunganian a dime, never even saw an invoice. And maybe the kicker. The complaint notes that MRI scans actually showed claimant C's herniation was decreasing in size before Kunganian operated.
Unbelievable. Okay, one more quickly, claimant D, just to round out the pattern.
Right. Claimant D passenger in a low-speed 3-car collision involving an Uber driver. Police report. Property damage only, no injuries reported. The downtown LA law group allegedly referred claimant D to Kongania, who then recommended a lumbar microdiscectomy, even though claimant D had apparently managed any previous injury successfully with just chiropractic care and injections. A demand letter then goes to Uber's lawyers asking for $750,000, falsely claiming significant bodily injuries from this minor accident.
So it's just case after case following a similar alleged pattern.
Exactly. And to really drive that home, the complaint includes a table. It details the inflated bills across 9 different claimants, claimants A through I. It vividly illustrates the alleged pattern. For instance, Congenian's bills for these surgeries and appointments, they range from like $1,500 up to $230,000 for one person. Radiant Surgery Center's bills went up to $270,795 for just one claimant. The thread connecting all these isn't just the alleged fraud itself, it's kind of the chilling efficiency, you know? How a coordinated scheme can potentially exploit rules, exploit vulnerabilities, turning minor incidents into these huge financial drains, and who ultimately bears that cost, often the broader public, through higher prices and premiums.
We've definitely seen the mechanics, and we've met the alleged players through these really vivid examples. So let's bring it back out. What are the concrete consequences for Uber here? And crucially for us, for consumers, when these kinds of alleged schemes are operating?
Well, the direct impact on Uber, according to the complaint, is huge. It states this alleged fraud has resulted in millions of dollars of harm. And that's not just from paying out inflated settlements, it's also the substantial expenses to investigate and defend all these false and inflated claims. So it directly damaged Uber in its business, in its property.
And that presumably gets passed on.
That's the connection to the bigger picture, right? If Uber's costs go up dramatically, especially insurance costs, which are already huge, that inevitably puts pressure on fares for riders and earnings for drivers. And that's why Uber is turning to that powerful federal law we mentioned, ARCO.
Right, the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. Why ARCO specifically?
The complaint argues that the usual legal tools, things like asking for sanctions in individual cases or filing counterclaims, they're just ill-suited to tackle a scheme like this because it allegedly spans numerous different court cases and involves all this out-of-court corrupt activity like those secret side deals.
So ICO offers something more.
Yeah, ICO gives federal courts really broad, equitable powers. Powers to actually terminate the conduct, shut it down, and try to make sure it won't happen again. And significantly, it also allows for treble damages.
Treble damages, meaning?
Uber could potentially recover 3 times the actual monetary damages it proves it suffered because of the scheme. It's a major financial deterrent.
So what specific relief, then, is Uber actually asking the court for in this lawsuit to stop this alleged pattern?
They're asking for quite a lot, both money and actions. On the money side, restitution, getting paid back, general damages, which would be troubled under ICO, prejudgment interest, attorney's fees and costs, and potentially punitive damages too.
And what about stopping the alleged behavior?
That's the equitable relief part. They're asking for temporary and permanent injunctions court orders telling the defendants to stop. They're asking for disgorgement, which means making the defendants give back any profits they made from the alleged illegal activity, and orders to prevent the defendants from doing similar things in the future. It could even potentially involve dissolving or reorganizing the businesses involved in the alleged scheme. The complaint really emphasizes that, in their view, the scheme is ongoing and Uber continues to suffer. So they want it stopped, and they want compensation.
Wow. What a deep dive. It is truly eye-opening to see the intricate details laid out like that,
Yeah.
how these alleged fraud schemes can potentially operate, and how they can impact not just large companies, but ultimately trickle down and affect consumers like you and me, whether it's through rideshare costs or maybe even our general insurance premiums.
Yeah, it really makes you think, doesn't it? It sort of leads to this bigger question. In a world where we're overloaded with information, dealing with complex systems all the time, how can we as individuals be more discerning? How can we protect ourselves from potentially exploitative practices like the ones alleged here? And maybe also, what role do these powerful legal frameworks like our ICO actually play in trying to combat these kinds of organized systemic schemes? It's definitely something to chew on